I'm going to give you 10 ways to run game-changing practices. You want everything you do in practice to make sure it translates to the game. And the best coaches I've ever been around treat practice as a competitive advantage. About 90% of your time with your team is going to be spent in practice, and you can't waste any of it. Stay tuned all the way through number 10, as these things combined are going to make your team much better. Number 1, treat practice as the edge. Here's what I mean by that. Most coaches show up on game day and they've got all these things that they want to coach. By the time you get to game day, it should be over. The preparation should have been so good that you just sit back and watch them take the test. Stop showing up with all your energy and ready to coach on game day. Get all of that done before you ever get there. Practice is where you gain the edge. Number 2, you don't need more drills. You need more identity. What do I mean by that? We show up all the time, we run drills because we want to check a whole bunch of boxes. We did this, we did that, we did that. And what happens is you check all those boxes, you and your players aren't sure what your identity is. You need to create an identity by spending most of your time on the most important things. They'll know it, you'll know it, and it'll show up on game day when you have a clear identity. Number 3, and this is one of my favorite, prioritize your identity. I'm going to give you something you can actually use to do that. A through F, just like you were in school. A, B, C, D, and F. Pick 5 different categories that are going to be important to you and your team. It could be offense, defense, rebounding, fundamentals, whatever 5 you want. And then either you or you and your staff sit down and give each one of them a letter. Something has to be an A, something has to be an F. That's the way you're going to prioritize. The A, there's no compromise on that. We are going to be great at this. But in order to do that, you have to know where you might not be great. Where can we just keep our head above water? If you try and be an A in all of them, I promise you, you're going to be jack of all trades and master of none. Prioritize by giving something an A and something an F. Now, hopefully the F won't be an actual F, but you got to know that I'm not going to be great at this because we're spending and committing more time to be an A in this. Number 4, build a system, not a collection. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff on social media, but one drill on top of another drill on top of another drill is just a collection of drills. If you're really going to progress, you got to make sure that you're stacking things. So for instance, if you want to be great at passing and making reads, you first have to get the fundamental, and you got to do that on the regular. Then you got to progress that to actually doing it maybe against guided defense. Now they know how to get the feel of when they're going to have to make this pass. And then you're going to want to maybe go even further and go into competition where they have to actually make a guided read. And then you'll want to turn it on live. But you have to go through the full progression if we're actually going to get good at it. You can't just one day do a passing drill and another day do a passing. That's just a collection of drills that's going to bear little fruit. But when you think in terms of building blocks and building progressions and moving something forward, you're going to have a much better approach to your practices. Number 5, discipline equals freedom. So when it comes to your practice plan, are you spending the appropriate amount of time making sure that you have an actual great plan? When you do, and you know what you want to get done, you're tracking it every single day, you're making a good adjustment based on what you learned from the previous practice, and then you go in, you can always have the freedom to adjust. The other way around doesn't work. I don't really have a practice plan and then I'm going to create discipline. Can't do that. But you can go in with discipline and then have the freedom to adjust. So make sure you're spending the appropriate amount of time building out a good discipline practice and then pivot where necessary. Number 6, red, yellow, green. Be intentional about the type of practice you're about to have. And here's the system I use, red, yellow, green. Red is a day where we're probably going to do a lot more talking and teaching. If I go into practice knowing that's going to be a day where we're going to do a lot of teaching, maybe not as much competing, as much drills, I don't leave disappointed. I know that we might gain more mentally than we're going to gain physically on that day. The opposite of that is a green, a practice where we just have to get a lot of work in. We got to get a lot of shots, a lot of reps, a lot of closeouts, a lot of whatever you need to get done. And on those days, I know that, gosh, we might not gain as much mentally, but physically we're going to get the work done on that day. And then the yellow, sometimes in between. We might progress practice, there might be an arc and then come back down and then go back up. But having an idea of the intentionality of your practice is going to be super important. So when you go into practice, know whether it's a red day, a green day, or a yellow day. And then you're going to walk away more days than not disappointed, because you know you got out of it what you wanted to get out of it. Number 7, load and unload. Now, this is the art of teaching and practice, and this is probably one of my favorite. When you go into practice, it's great to have good drills, good competitions, good small-sided games, but your ability as a coach to load and unload things so that players can either experience a high level of success or even a high level of frustration is really important. For example, if you're going and you're playing 3-on-3 and you want the offense to learn a new concept, and it's going to be a difficult one, you might want to make it a little bit easier and unload some of the things with the defense, put their hands behind their back. So they're going to get some success. And then as you grow and you get better at it, you might make it harder for them. So you might limit the number of dribbles. They only had 3 dribbles before, now you only have 1 dribble. They have to learn a whole new set of skills to be able to adapt in that. And so if you go into a drill and it's just too easy for them, do you know how to load it up and make it more challenging for them? Or if it's so challenging that they're getting no success out of it, do you know how to unload the drill so that they can find a little bit of success so that they can move their way forward? Loading and unloading any drill or game is a skill that great coaches have. Number 8, always debrief and celebrate. One of the biggest takeaways you can have from practice is not what you felt or what your coaching staff felt, but what did the players actually feel? So we love for them to be celebrated. We go around and have the players celebrate each other. It's leaving practice on a high note. When teammates are celebrating teammates, it builds your culture and also helps them to recognize what you're doing in practice. When they're celebrating great transition defense, I love the way that Trey hustled back. I love the way that Allison got on the floor. All right, well, they're saying these are the things we value. We appreciate these things. Not only does it build your culture, it reemphasizes your habits. And then you might even ask questions. Hey, what are some things that you learned today? What was the main focus of today? If you went in and the whole day was about defensive transition and the team says, oh, it was all about shooting, you probably didn't have a very good practice plan. So asking good questions and giving good celebrations, not only does it feel good and do you learn, but you're going to move and progress your culture and the understanding of what you're trying to do forward in a faster manner. Number 9, practice what happens the most in games. So many times we go out there and, alluding to the one we talked about earlier, just a collection of drills. You go in, you do this and you do that. What's going to actually happen in the game the most? What is your team going to have to be most proficient in? Well, we know there's going to be transition. They got to get up and down the floor. We know they've got to connect on passes. We can make a list of things we know are going to happen in every single game. Oftentimes, the thing that happens the most is practiced the least. You don't want to major in the minors. So you don't want to be so good at something that's not that important, but you gave 50% of your practice time to. So make yourself a checklist of the things that are going to happen the most in games and the things you need to be the best at. And make sure that your practice plan is actually lining up with the things that are going to be most important for your team to have success in a game. And up next, number 10, which is my favorite. Number 10. Culture in everything. You know, the goal of the season is this, to help your team achieve the most they possibly can. Show me a team with a great culture, and I'll show you a team that's going to achieve or overachieve. Show me a team with a bad culture. Now, they might win some games because of some talent, but it's highly likely they're going to actually underachieve when it comes down to the end. But if you have a great culture, you have a chance to achieve what your team possibly can, and maybe even go above and beyond that. So what does that look like? Well, how you do anything is how you do everything. There's teams that are going to line up with 3 people in a line to do a shooting drill. And they're just going to shoot, walk off after their rebound, pass it back to the next person and go. And it's just going to be a lazy shooting drill. There's other people that are going to be on the other extreme. They're going to run after their rebound. They're going to throw it back into the shot pocket. They're going to communicate the entire time. They're going to celebrate for their teammates. There's people that are going to go on defense and they're just going to get through shell drill. And there's other people that are going to go and they're going to get to do shell drill. The attitude is everything. So you have a team that just has to do this defensive drill or a team that loves doing this defensive drill. You got to fight for that every day. And I promise you, you can't X's and O everything to success. But you can make up for things that you're not good at because you show up with joy and excitement and your culture believes in it. So if you're not teaching culture in everything that you do, don't expect to make up for it with a pizza party. Culture is a full-time job. And if you're going to run great practices, you're going to have a great culture.